right, welcome everyone. Are we on? Perfect. On today's session, we will be talking about driving agentic innovation with MCP. My name is Don Scott. I'm the GM of Azure AI Marketing, and with me is Maria.
Hi, my name is Maria Naggaga, and I am one of the product leads in Developer Tools and Platform.
Awesome. For today's session, we'll spend around 30 minutes going through content, and then we'll leave a healthy 15-minute segment for Q&A. So you'll have a chance to come up to the microphone, ask questions, and we'll do our best to answer you. With that, with a show of hands, how many of you have attempted to build an agent that calls an external system? Okay, I'd say about half the room. And keep your hand up there if you thought there was opportunity for improvement and it was maybe a little cumbersome. Yeah, almost everyone. That's what we're here to discuss today. We're going to show you how we're fundamentally changing the way we think about building tool-aware AI systems, both in our services and in your services on our platform. Now, before we get into the entire scope of what we're doing around tools, I think it's helpful to frame around our brand. So of course, Microsoft Foundry is our hero AI brand. It's the unified platform for building, optimizing, and governing AI at scale. It works from the cloud to edge, and it's all governed by a single control plane called the Foundry control plane. It brings together Foundry models, which has the broadest selection of AI models of any cloud, and we welcomed Anthropic today. Very excited about that. And it allows customers to fine-tune those models with machine learning and ultimately deploy agents using the Foundry agent service for secure multi-agent orchestration, both with the Microsoft Agent Framework, as well as any other framework through our hosted agents, which we announced today. Then we have this thing called IQ. You saw this all over the keynote, where you have Work IQ, which is you, your business, your process. We have Foundry IQ, which is how we connect your data in Power BI to your business concepts. Fabric IQ, which is how we connect your data in Power BI to your business concepts, and then Foundry IQ, which is knowledge for agents. Ultimately, Foundry IQ and tools are very related, so we'll talk a little bit about that. But the focus of today's talk is going to be tools, tool calling, the simplest expression of how agents can interact with context and take action on your business systems. So with that, I think it makes sense to just pause for a minute and take a second to break down what an agent is. Maria?
Yeah, so first of all, an agent is the buzzword of the year.
Certainly.
Right? But in its simplest form, an agent is a simple program where you allow an LLM to help decide and control the flow of your program. Now, we talked earlier where people talked about the pain points of building an agent, right? One of the things that Model Context Protocol provides you with is a way for you to easily interact with your agent against tools and services, APIs, improving the output. Because an LLM alone with instructions is just that. Mm-hmm. Tools grounded in context.
Mm-hmm. So when we think about the challenge in front of us, you saw this stat at the keynote. The IDC predicts 1.3 billion agents will be in production in the next 2 years. So there's real challenges that we all need to grapple through as developers, as IT decision makers, et cetera. And when we think about tool calling, the lack of high quality context in today's agents is one of the most critical challenges. And that's, I think, a lot of what we'll discuss today. And innate in that topic is this integration overhead, where when developers have to connect to all of these different point systems, it adds so much friction to the development process. And it has somebody building an integration that ultimately might not be the expert in that specific business system. And then to kind of compound these challenges, assuming that you land and get that integration working, you have tremendous governance concerns where you can have inconsistent policies, you need to monitor these things so that when they go awry, you know, and you ultimately need to do all of this without imposing so much friction that it slows innovation and prevents agents from doing something useful, driving real business value. So all of this is why we need a unified approach that gives agents a secure, governed way to access our business systems and our knowledge. So enter Model Context Protocol, or MCP. I can tell from the size of the audience here that you've all heard about this protocol. It's certainly a buzz. It's not just Microsoft that's investing in MCP. It's major players. It's OpenAI, it's Google, it's DeepMind, it's AWS, Hugging Face. Everyone is deploying MCP. And Microsoft is proud to have a number of seats on the MCP steering committee. And we're actively contributing to that protocol and how it is shaped, especially around security, where we've already made a number of contributions. With MCP, Microsoft is moving forward with a unified, secure way to access all of our tools and data across our surfaces. So why is that really interesting? We'll show a couple of examples today, but I think with MCP, when we have the ability to define a connector once, when we get to these agentic workflows, we really unlock significant value when you have a well-defined tool. Because not only can we use that tool in our chat interfaces, in our customer service portals, but we can use it in our developer tools, in our productivity suite. We just get a lot more value out of that tool than we ever could when it's running as an agent, because it can remember how I like to interact with these tools in what sequence, and it's a lot more powerful. But with that, Maria, do you want to explain what is MCP?
Exactly, right? Like beyond just a buzzword. So I put together this diagram. It's also on MCP's official documentation, and it's a clear way of breaking down the value of MCP. So over here on the side, let's start with a simple definition of what MCP is. MCP is a protocol. We're developers. We all know protocols. You've done OpenAPI, right? Like this is just another protocol to simplify the way you interact with agentic tools within your agent. Mm-hmm. So when you look at this diagram, you'll notice that I have chat, code editor, and AI applications. This is what we call an MCP client. Now, the MCP client uses the MCP protocol to attach to multiple MCP servers. Mm-hmm. And these MCP servers can give you access to your data and files. They can improve your developer tools and experiences. So how many here use GitHub Copilot? If you don't, please go try. Like, how many people use it? Yay, right?
How many have tried agent mode? Okay, great.
So you've used an MCP, right? So you attach your MCP to your GitHub Copilot, and it can pull things like GitHub issues. It can run tests for you, just making it more fluid for developers and users to interact with their application. Mm-hmm. But some of my favorite things are like the productivity tools, which are things that mean things to multiple different users, from developers to end users to your everyday business needs. So imagine you are in your Copilot experience, M365. Mm-hmm. And I would like to just check my email without opening Outlook and feeling overwhelmed. So I can say, which important emails did Don send to me today about this talk, right? And it will give them back to me. And I can actually generate a response, approve it, and then you know everything is good. Yeah. And like this is the value of MCP.
So Maria, what is this local MCP server versus remote? It's a little bit confusing.
It's all so complicated. No, it's not, right? So when you think about a local MCP server, you guessed it, it's running locally on your machine. On your laptop, it does things like accesses files, which are sitting on your machine, or complete a task for you that is local to your experience. So like Playwright, please go and launch this in localhost. Those are all local MCP servers. Now, the magic and where we offer all the beauty of security is in the remote MCP servers. These are MCP servers just hosted in the cloud of your choice, preferably on Azure, but hosted in the cloud of your choice, speaking through a standard HTTP protocol or SSE. And this is great for scale. It allows you to also secure your information on Azure in a tight space. And you can also distribute it across multiple users and agents within your tenant.
Awesome. Let's take a look at one.
You want to take a look at one?
Yes.
Okay, so I really like this one because it is a mixture of a local and remote MCP, right?
Yes.
So as a PM, I have to write a lot of documentation, do research, put it all together, and typically it would take me about 2 to 3 days in between meetings. Now, in this demo that I'm going to play, you'll notice that I have a markdown file, and I'm breaking it down into a series of steps. 1, analyze our GitHub repo. 2, I wanted to look at deep research so it can tell me how I'm competing in the market. And then finally, build an HTML page. So I'm going to attach my markdown file to agent mode. Look, didn't attach an MCP. It will run through the markdown file and start creating its own tasks. Like you can say created for to-dos, which are each phase. It's gathering the data from GitHub, so it's looking at every single PR, every single issue that we've closed. And now I'm going to do research using 𝗬𝗲𝗲𝗏, which is another MCP, which is like an agent for the web. So I want to know how I'm doing against other people. That is fine. Then finally, this usually takes a bit of time because it's crawling the web. I'm going to generate an HTML report. And then it's going to test it with Playwright. So in a moment, boom, there you have it. I didn't type any code.
Really neat. It was interesting to see it go through the whole workflow.
The whole workflow. So 𝗬𝗲𝗏 was a remote MCP, GitHub remote, Playwright local, right? And then the other one, which was the HTML file, was it just running a process. So it did it all by itself.
Awesome.
Right. Do you want to see how we're doing at Microsoft? Thank you.
So this is great. You can see there's a lot of potential here, even with a basic workflow where it's a single agent equipped with multiple tools. Microsoft is making MCP servers easy to use across the entire stack for the enterprise. So today we're going to talk about how we're making Azure more MCP enabled and how Microsoft Foundry is connected to that story. We're also going to share how you can get started very quickly leveraging some of our latest announcements. And we're going to show you how you can build your own MCP servers on your own applications and then host them for your internal users. We'll also cover briefly how you can connect to your data using MCP tool calls. And there will be a talk tomorrow where Foundry IQ can be explored in more depth. All of this is built with governance in mind, and that's really been the focus from Microsoft, as you could tell from this morning's keynote. So first, we're announcing Foundry Tools in Microsoft Foundry. This is the unified catalog of tools, connectors, and of course, MCP servers designed to simplify the building of your agentic apps. So not only are we hydrating this catalog, available now, you can try it out, with 1,400 plus connectors, but this is where if you create MCP servers in your organization, they will also appear right into the product UX. This makes it easier to discover, connect, and ultimately manage your set of MCP servers from a single interface in Foundry. We're also excited to be welcoming a number of partners to our MCP registries that have all been code scanned and attested by our internal teams. Today we're announcing connectors from Box, Atlassian, Stripe, and many, many more. So this means agents can connect to these external business systems with these integrations and start automating your workflows and extending your agentic capabilities right away. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention Agent 365. Many of you are probably dying to get your hands on this. And effective today, for those customers that are in our Frontier program, you will have access to deploy MCP servers on some of our most popular productivity suite applications. So Outlook, Teams, Word, OneDrive, SharePoint, etc. These MCP servers will let you interact and automate tasks right in your productivity suite, like automate your mailbox. Super exciting. I can't wait to get my hands on that. All of this leverages user permissions. So you're in control with what your organization does, and you have confidence that they can only access the documents that they're allowed to access. So kind of framing it all up, when we think about operationalizing MCP at scale, there really ends up being three main categories, which we'll discuss today. The first is discovering the right servers. The second is securely deploying them in your organization. And then finally, observing and governing their use. Because things will go wrong. It's about how do you protect against those adverse scenarios and remediate them when they pop up. With that, I think this is a great opportunity, Maria, to hop into a quick example of how we get started.
Another demo?
Another demo.
Okay.
And you heard me hint it, but today we have announced that all 1,400 Logic App connectors that many of you have been using for over a decade are now available as MCP servers. This means you don't have to create anything. It's very easy to attach, and let's show them.
Yeah, let's show them. So I'm really excited about this feature because so many people within Microsoft and even our partners worked really hard to bring this together, right? One of them is right in the room. So one of the things that you would think about when you think about Logic Apps were at the frontier of automating things, right? Like they automated all these tasks for you. And when you look at that and you look at agents and you look at MCP servers, you're just like, that looks like a perfect combination to bring together.
Absolutely.
So today, with Foundry, you can take your Logic app and workflows and expose them as MCP servers to agents within Foundry. As we call them, Foundry agents. So I'm going to go through this demo, right? So this time, fingers crossed, it works. Kind of like being a little bit messy on this. So what you're going to notice is that Logic Apps is connected. I'm going to search for Dropbox, and then I'm going to connect it. It's going to connect it to my Logic app within Azure. This experience is currently in Azure,
Portal.
But we're trying to make it better for people, to make it better, make it easier. So once you've added the actions, you start just adding like your registry name, right? Like your MCP server name. Like there you are, Dropbox MCP server. Now you can use it as with your Foundry agent. So in this, it's actually generating a report of all the different files that are in my Dropbox, right?
Looping on them.
Looping on them in RAG, right? So it's going through like, what were the hottest items that sold during Ignite, right? It goes through them. We're able to see all the information run through. You would have had to read these docs in the past. Now you can just review what's coming back to you and check if it's valid. And then I can also say, create a new document for me and put it back in Dropbox. So I'm going to create a new document. As you can see, I'm typing really, really fast right now. And then what it's going to do is that it's going to send it to the agent. The agent is going to look at its actions or tools and then complete the task for me. And then I can just send you a link.
What's so amazing about this is you didn't write any code whatsoever.
No.
And you didn't write any MCP server whatsoever. You just connected to the existing systems we already had.
Exactly, meaning that all your Logic apps are reusable as MCP servers. So you don't even have a learning hump. You just do it.
Right. Yeah, and I think you just hinted of something that I think is really interesting here too, which is that not only are the connections now MCP servers with Logic apps, but the actual Logic app itself can also be an MCP server. So if you've created a low-code workflow in a Logic app, you can expose the entire thing, the entire deterministic workflow as an MCP tool. This is really helpful if you have quick little tasks to achieve. You can do them in the portal. You can export them as Terraform. They're very easy to use and deploy. Now, of course, that's a great example of taking action and building context. But when you have more sophisticated enterprise data systems, you often want to pull data from them or execute queries on that underlying data store. And what we're doing across our stack, beyond kind of the sophisticated retrieval mechanisms in IQ, we're also exposing those systems as tools. So today we wanted to feature Databricks, who recently just completed an integration with Foundry on Genie Rooms. So for folks that aren't aware of Databricks, it's one of our fastest growing data products in Azure. Spark-based platform where you can have all of your data in a tool called 𝗦𝗽𝗲𝗀𝗃, and then there's a number of different ways to access that data. With this demo, we're going to show you how you can start in the Foundry UX in the standard agent builder experience. You'll be able to go into, starting today, the tool catalog, find your Genie Room, which is a collection of tables in Databricks, throw the URL in there, press go. All the credential exchange happens behind the scenes using your user credentials. And you'll see when we do our first query here, it'll ask us to go through that OAuth flow. So go ahead and grant consent. And then once we get through this process, we have our normal tool grant process. So you'll see it'll ask me consent to run that tool call. In this case, we have the New York City taxicab data. I'm just asking for a dump of like the most popular zip codes here. You'll see it immediately returns a response. It's figured out all that SQL query on the back end. And then if I want to ask a more sophisticated question, like here, what might some of these variances be coming from, it will run a more sophisticated query and return that to me. And what's really powerful about this pattern is that Databricks as a company knows how to write queries on the data on Unity Catalog. Same with Fabric, with data agents, and all the other competing platforms. This gives those platforms an opportunity to figure out how to write the queries against their system the best and return the most relevant query to you, the user. This is something that you can use today, and we're really excited about because it gives you a taste of how you can start taking the existing data assets that you have and answering free text questions. All right. So with that, Maria, why don't you take us through what are all of these registries and how do I interact with them in the Azure cloud?
Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. So this is something I personally worked on at Microsoft, was when MCPs bloomed into existence, right?
Recently,
it turned a year this week. When MCP servers bloomed into existence, what we saw was a mad gold rush of people trying to make sure that they owned the MCP registry and catalog.
Right.
That was a disaster, right? As a result, we found multiple companies, multiple people submitting their MCP registries into multiple places with no security, no guardrails. There was another Maria who claimed to own the Azure MCP. We had to take that down, right? But then we said, how do we make sure that the MCP server that you're using in your project, in your application, in your solution was valid? So we did what we do best. We partnered. So we partnered with Anthropic to build the registry API. The registry API is a standard way that people are able to put their MCPs onto any single MCP catalog or registry that adheres to that MCP server, like that registry API.
Awesome.
Right? So build once, federate to multiple places. So GitHub and Anthropic did that. But still, you can imagine that was a bit still of the wild, wild west, right? Anyone in the ecosystem can build an MCP. We want them to build an MCP server. But we also want to make sure that businesses feel secure when they're taking a dependency on this.
Right.
So we did what we do best, which is enterprise-grade governance for MCPs within your organization. This still adheres to the same MCP registry spec set by Anthropic, as well as our members on the steering committee. So it will just work. But it also allows for every single company to have a more fine-grained experience of what they allow into their tenant. And then finally, we have on-the-device registry. So typically, when you have an MCP server today, local or remote, and you want to use it either in VS Code or Claude or maybe Spotify one day, you have to configure that across every single client. It's a lot of duplication. So Windows makes it easier for Windows to identify what the compatible MCPs are, clients are, and just expose it. So we are delivering on the promise of install once, accessible everywhere locally, right? So that is the vision that we're doing with the registry. We also have the concept of the Microsoft Agent Store, where we're working to make sure that we have a single place that allows you to get an MCP, and then we will give you an in-store experience, like in-app experience.
And Microsoft is also using the Agent Store as an opportunity to highlight the governed, secure, first-party offerings from each of the ISVs, so that you don't have to be guessing of like who created this MCP server. You know when it's from the company itself.
Perfect. Okay. So, how do we govern this stuff? How do you create your own private registry? How many of you have heard of Azure API Center?
Only a few people.
Only a few people? How many people in this room work on Azure API Center at Microsoft? Okay, they're in this room.
We got one, yeah.
We got one? There are questions there. But API Center enables you to build your own MCP registry relevant to your business. The beauty of this is that you can also configure the MCPs that are external that you want inside your registry. And we'll see a demo of that in a little bit. So why is this a good experience? One, it's a tailored enterprise tools experience, so organizations can develop and host their MCP servers specifically tailored to their experience, which I described earlier. It is, the best part, centralized governance. A private registry provides a centralized single source of truth for everyone in your enterprise. So I will be like, this is the Maria Awesome Enterprise MCP registry, and distribute it to everyone in my team. And because we're simplifying that, it just accelerates development as a whole. I don't have to call my IT admin and say, please, 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 can you add this?
Can you grant admin
Can you grant
consent?
Can you do this? Yep. Or you get randomly blocked when you try to install it. It just gives you a single place for you to do this.
Awesome.
Yeah. Okay. Demo time. Just stretching my fingers as I get ready, right? So, the next demo that we're going to show you is how easily, with code, you can create, deploy an MCP server for your enterprise within Azure API Center. So, just stretching it out as I get my fingers ready to type once again. Okay, so there we go, I'm typing. And what this is I am creating a simple, it's just code. At the end of the day, it's code, it's not magic. We've all written code before. This is an API MCP server.
It's not that much code. It's 100 lines.
Yes, with spaces, right?
True.
So it's 100 lines of code, and it's leveraging Azure Functions. Azure Functions introduced a feature called MCP Trigger, which allows it to recognize that something is an MCP server, right? So when you deploy it to Azure. In this specific MCP server, I'm building a simple tool, right, that does a standard thing, read and write data into my Azure Blob storage.
Okay.
Okay? Basic things. And in Python, usually I write in .NET, so if you see any mistakes, I'm a .NET developer. Don't make fun of my Python code. Okay. So once again, once I've deployed my MCP server to Azure, it appears in Azure Functions. And yeah, it's working, right? You see? Demo worked, right? So it's in Azure Functions. I'm going to head over. This is my private tool catalog. You can see a bunch of MCPs. That is my registry. Now, since I have my registry configured and my MCPs deployed using Azure Functions, I go over to the tools catalog and magic.
It's right there.
It's right there. I connect it to an agent. Once it is connected, I can use it in my agent. And in this specific agent, what I'm doing is that I want to check all the asset managements that exist, like who needs a new laptop, right? Who has a laptop right now? It's going to run. It gave the regular consent that you saw before. So it's the same flow. It's not different. Once I run that, it will then give me the results of all the information that has been entered into the database. I'm going to look for one specific entry, which I think is entry 1, and it's going to let me know that Eli is up for a refresh. All right, I can't read that far, but I'm assuming that we need to get Eli a new computer, right? And that is the demo, incredibly simple.
Super simple. So, when you think about API Center, it sounds like it makes it really easy for you to decide which external MCP servers you want to be want available to your organization, as well as give you an opportunity to write your own MCP servers and publish them to everyone. Is that right?
Yes, it is.
And if I create an MCP server here, does it show up in Copilot as well?
Yes, it does.
Wow, that's awesome.
It does. So you can also configure your specific MCP client to consume from a specific registry. So you don't even have to look for it yourself. And then GitHub today has a wonderful experience where you can actually see every single MCP in your registry. So like you search it, it pops out, you install.
Sweet. Yeah. Well, with that, that is our 101 level walkthrough of what we've delivered today. Thank you.
Thank you.
We know this is a hot topic, and we wanted to provide enough time to kind of drain some of the questions that may be in the room as this technology is developing. So we have actually around 12, 13 minutes to cover questions. We're just going to ask that folks file up in a line here in front of the microphone so that the folks joining us on the web can hear you.
Come on up, brave man. Yeah.
I can ask a dumb question. So we talked a lot about MCP and GitHub.
Mm-hmm.
What I want to know is MCP and ServiceNow.
Okay, what do you want to know about MCP and ServiceNow?
Anything you can tell me.
Okay, so
basically, I want to go and figure out what tickets are being generated, which ones have a higher success rate of being closed, anything else we need to change, within the ServiceNow realm.
Okay, and funny enough, that was actually supposed to be our demo, remember?
Yep, we do.
Currently, if you do have a ServiceNow connector that is in your specific Azure subscription, and you expose it as an MCP server, it will do the scenarios that you have described. In addition to that, ServiceNow, I believe, does have an MCP server.
Yeah.
And if you have a subscription, it will work for you.
So I think what we're saying is two paths. There's a first-party MCP server that you could deploy to API Center.
Yeah.
Or there's the Logic App MCP server that you could deploy with the specific tools that you need.
All right, so part B.
Yeah.
We use ServiceNow. We have a huge CMDB in it. So can it explore the CMDB and help us figure out what's connected to what from a configuration perspective?
I'm not sure on that, but we're happy to take your information down and maybe we can follow up.
Please, thank you.
All right.
Hi. I was hoping if you could shed some light on the API Center.
Mm-hmm.
Would it be right to describe it as a conceptual API gateway for MCP servers?
In some respects, I would describe it more as a private registry with some governance features layered on. In Foundry with Agent Service, there actually is an AI gateway on all tool calls. So when you're creating an agent in Foundry and it does any kind of external tool call, all of that telemetry around what goes out to that tool and what comes back in from that tool and how long it took gets automatically put in a span. So that's actually done with an API gateway of sorts. So I wouldn't necessarily describe it as an API gateway, but there is an API gateway tool that we have, APIM. Maria, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, so APIM, which stands for API Management, is what leverages It sits below API Center, and what gives you a control plane to configure how to manage your specific APIs, MCPs as well.
Okay. And just to follow up, the API gateway, it can only be used within the Azure ecosystem. Can it be used from, say, services running in GCP or AWS?
Actually,
go ahead.
you can bring your services from the other cloud, and it will work within here. That's the way API Center works today.
It's fully open.
Completely.
In fact, API management is deployable on other clouds and on-premises environments as well. So that all of these tools can be used cross-cloud, and we expect customers will be using these tools cross-cloud.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi. My question was related to the demo that you showed deploying in Azure, like an MCP server on a function app. I used to develop MCP servers with the FastMCP SDK.
Okay.
In that case, you used a different SDK, or was it the same?
Oh, for this specific demo,
Yeah.
it's the same.
Okay.
And if you go to aka.ms MCP remote, right, it will have the demo code that I just showed.
Was it this one?
Yes. Yes. Do you see it at the bottom?
MCP-remote.
Remote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it will have the samples in Python, .NET, and JavaScript.
Amazing. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so you talked a lot about MCP tools, but I'm wondering about the other primitives, resources and prompts. Do you have anything special for those that you're providing or making access to?
No, not at the moment, but we are working to have more experiences like that. Right now, we're purely focused on tools because that's where we see majority of people invested in, and the other parts of the spec are still evolving, and we're working to involve them, but tools seems pretty stable right now.
With that said, in Foundry IQ, which is a much kind of wider product that does indexing, chunking, embedding, kind of like your easy button for RAG, one feature it has is agentic retrieval, and that has a reasoning prompt in it. So you might want to reason over your files, and then when you don't have particular information in your grounding source, go to the web. All of that kind of prompting you can put in that product, and it will use your prompt to decide how to route your requests.
Yeah, but it's separate from the protocol itself. Right?
It is separate from the protocol itself. Yes.
Cool. Thank you.
Hi, I'm sort of new to the whole concept of MCP and servers. Could you talk a little bit about how MCP clients and servers authenticate? Is there a common protocol? Is that part of MCP?
I will take your information because I want to send you a blog post that goes through every single one of those steps. 𝗦𝗲𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, who is one of our technical advisors on the project, has written a bunch of information on that. Yes. I just can't remember. Like when it comes to security, I try not to speak off.
Yeah, speak off the cuff.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi. We have like thousands of APIs in APIM, and we have seen there is option in MCP in APIM.
Yes.
So is that coming? Like we can access any API configured in APIM through MCP?
Oh, so you have thousands, just to give you back your question, you have thousands of APIs in APIM and API Center today, and you want to expose them as MCPs to an agent. Yes, you can do that, right? There is an option and a flag within API Center where you actually, just with a tick, it will actually expose it as an MCP server to your agent, very similar to what we saw with
It's a
Logic.
shortcut. It's
Yeah.
exactly like Logic Apps.
Yeah.
If you have an existing API that you can call, we're just allowing you to expose it with a quick flick
all other
as an MCP server.
And all other delegated access will work as it is, right? So the delegated token will work.
Yes.
Yes, it will. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, and sir, there is a blog post, if you look it up, API Center from API to MCP. It was one of the first things that we tested back in June. So we have a detailed blog on how to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
I'm audible? Yeah. I just wanted to know more about the multi-modality of MCP. like we just saw the textual mode, right? What about the other modality for in
Yeah.
MCP?
Do you want to take that? No. Okay. Yeah. Well, fundamentally, the calling agent can package any kind of inbound assets and send it as a MCP call. So let's say that I've pasted an image. The agent that's kind of receiving that image can then invoke MCP with that payload.
So what about the streaming part of it? Like, like you said, it's over HTTP. Or 2.0, like support both.
The streaming back of the response happens in the agent itself.
But the input part of it, like if it's a stream of data which need to be.
Oh, a stream of data. There's some protocol expansion work going on right now around async MCP calls and parallel calls. I think it would be good to follow up to kind of hear your exact scenario, and we can provide more specific guidance on like how to do that.
Sure.
But when you think about agents interacting with other agents, that's an area that we're deeply invested in. Like how does MCP compose with that workflow? And we need that asynchronous capability and that parallel capability for agent-on-agent communication. So it's an area of work right now.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, with that, we wanted to thank everyone for joining our session, and we hope you have a great Ignite. Thank you.